I stared at the DNA results in my trembling hands while Nicole's ultimatum echoed in my mind. Give me every penny of Dad's money, or you'll never see your grandchildren again. The laboratory report showed what I never could have imagined. This woman who'd tormented me for decades, who claimed I owed her everything, wasn't even my daughter. But if Nicole wasn't mine, then where was my real child? My name is Barbara Thompson, and at 68 years old, I thought I knew everything about my life. I was wrong about nearly all of it. I've been wearing my late husband's dog tags for 27 years now. The metal has worn smooth against my chest, but the memories they carry remain sharp as ever. Michael died when our daughter Nicole was barely walking, leaving me to raise her alone on a military widow's pension that stretched about as far as a rubber band in a tornado. Those early years blur together like watercolors in the rain. Sleepless nights with a crying baby, secondhand clothes from church donations, generic cereal that tasted like cardboard but filled little bellies. I told myself every sacrifice was worth it, every missed opportunity, every dream I shelved, all of it justified because I was building a life for my daughter. Nicole grew up angry though, can't say I blamed her entirely. Losing your father before you can even remember his voice leaves scars that never quite heal properly. She'd throw tantrums about not having the toys her classmates had, complained about our tiny apartment, asked why other kids had daddies and she didn't. Well, here's where things get interesting. Last month, 27 years after Michael's death, I received a letter that changed everything. The military had finally untangled a bureaucratic mess involving Michael's benefits and life insurance policies. Turns out there had been paperwork errors, delayed claims, and enough red tape to wrap around the Pentagon twice. The settlement amount made me read the number 3 times before it sank in. $2 million. I sat in my kitchen, still in my faded bathrobe, staring at that figure until my coffee went cold. For the first time since Michael died, I could breathe without worrying about money. I could help my grandchildren with college, maybe even take that trip to Ireland I dreamed about. The funny thing about money is how fast word travels. I hadn't told a soul about the inheritance, but Nicole showed up at my door the very next day. She had that look in her eyes, the same calculating expression she'd worn as a teenager when she wanted something expensive. "Mom, we need to talk about this money," she said, not even bothering with hello. She'd brought my grandchildren, but left them sitting in her car like hostages. Those sweet kids pressed their faces against the windows, waving at me while their mother delivered what felt like a business proposition. Nicole didn't congratulate me, didn't seem happy that her old mother might finally have some security. Instead, she launched into a speech about how I owed her, how I'd destroyed her childhood by not providing luxuries, how wearing thrift store clothes had traumatized her, how my failure to remarry had deprived her of a proper family. Then came the ultimatum that knocked the wind right out of me. Give me every penny of Dad's money, or you'll never see your grandchildren again. Her voice was ice cold, clinical, like she was discussing grocery lists instead of tearing apart our family. I'm serious, Mom. Sign it all over to me, or I'm moving across the country. You'll become a stranger to these kids. She gave me 24 hours to decide. After she left, I did what I always do when life overwhelms me. I cleaned. Started in the attic, where dust and memories compete for space. That's where I found the old hospital records from Nicole's birth, tucked inside a box of Michael's things. The dates didn't match my memories. There were mentions of complications I didn't remember having. Most puzzling was a note about pastoral care arrangements with Chaplain Morrison and his wife Sarah, the couple who'd helped me through those dark early months of grief. Something wasn't adding up, and Nicole's cruel demands suddenly felt like the key to a lock I didn't even know existed. I remember staring at that DNA kit on my kitchen counter like it might bite me. Funny how a little plastic tube can hold the power to destroy everything you thought you knew about your life. The morning Nicole was supposed to return for my answer, she showed up 3 hours early. Must have been eager to get her hands on that money. She waltzed through my front door like she owned the place, carrying a manila folder thick as a phone book. I had some papers drawn up, she announced, spreading documents across my coffee table with the efficiency of a tax attorney. Just sign here, here, and initial there. Makes the whole process cleaner. She'd done her homework, I'll give her that. The woman had researched the exact inheritance amount down to the penny, had legal forms prepared, even brought witnesses, my own grandchildren, standing in my living room like tiny hostages in their Sunday clothes. "Tell Grandma how much you want those new bikes," Nicole coached them, her voice sickeningly sweet. "Tell her about the dance classes Sarah wants to take." Watching those innocent babies beg for things while their mother orchestrated the manipulation made my stomach turn. But something else caught my attention, the way Nicole stood apart from them. No casual touches, no natural affection. She handled those kids like props in a play. "I need to visit the bank first," I told her, stalling for time. "Papers this important require proper handling." Nicole's jaw tightened. "The bank can wait. Sign now." "Tomorrow," I said firmly. "I'll have an answer tomorrow." After they left, I sat alone with my racing heart and that DNA kit. The expedited results were supposed to arrive that afternoon. Part of me hoped I was wrong about everything. Part of me hoped the test would prove Nicole was exactly who she claimed to be. Just a damaged daughter acting out. The other part of me knew better. When the delivery truck pulled up at 2:30 that afternoon, my hands were already shaking before I signed for the package. The manila envelope felt heavier than it should have. Inside, clinical laboratory letterhead framed words that rewrote my entire existence. Probability of maternal relationship, 0.0%. 0. Not even close. Not a distant cousin or half relation. Nothing. I read those results 5 times before my brain could process what they meant. This woman who'd been calling me mom for 27 years shared exactly 0 DNA with me. The daughter I'd sacrificed everything for wasn't my daughter at all. Then the really terrifying question hit me. If Nicole wasn't mine, where was my real child? I drove to Riverside Cemetery without really deciding to go there. Michael's grave sits under an old oak tree, and I've had some of my best conversations with him there over the years. Sounds crazy, but talking to his headstone helps me think clearly. "Michael, honey, I think we've got a problem," I whispered to the granite marker. "A big one." That's when I noticed Chaplain Morrison's grave just 3 rows over. Harold Morrison. Died 15 years ago. His wife Sarah's plot right beside him died 8 years back. The groundskeeper was trimming grass nearby, an elderly man who looked like he'd been working that cemetery since the Civil War. "Excuse me," I called out. "Did you know the Morrison family?" His face lit up with recognition. "Oh, sure. Lovely couple. Well, mostly lovely. Sarah had her struggles." "What kind of struggles?" "Difficult pregnancy, for one thing. That woman could never seem to get motherhood right. Always mixing up details about her baby. Brought the wrong diaper bag to church. Called her daughter by different names." He paused, leaning on his rake. "Strangest thing, she'd show up to church events with what looked like completely different babies. Like she couldn't tell one infant from another." My blood turned to ice water. Different babies. Course, all babies look alike when they're tiny. But Sarah seemed genuinely confused about basic things. Which formula her child preferred. Sleep schedules that kept changing. Made folks wonder if she was handling new motherhood okay. I thanked him and drove home with my mind spinning like a carnival ride. Back in my attic, I pulled out every photograph and document I could find from Nicole's first year of life. This time, I looked with different eyes. The inconsistencies were everywhere once I knew what to look for. Hospital bracelets with dates that didn't match my memory. Visitors' logs showing Sarah Morrison at my house almost daily during those grief-stricken months when I could barely function. Letters I'd forgotten about, including one from Sarah expressing guilt about her husband's indiscretions and her own difficult situation. Then I found Harold Morrison's confession letter. Hidden behind a photograph in an old frame, Harold's handwriting detailed his affair with me during my vulnerable widowhood. How Sarah discovered his infidelity. How Sarah became pregnant around the same time I was struggling with a newborn and severe depression. The timeline became crystal clear. Sarah Morrison couldn't bear raising the child conceived from her husband's affair with me. Meanwhile, I was so lost in grief and exhaustion that I barely noticed when she started taking care of Nicole during her frequent visits. Sarah had orchestrated a switch, taking my biological daughter and leaving me with her own child. The woman I'd raised wasn't acting out from father-loss trauma. She was a stranger, raised by Sarah Morrison, to believe I had somehow wronged their family. that I owed them compensation for destroying their marriage. When Nicole returned that evening for my final answer, I watched her with completely new awareness. Every manipulative tactic, every calculated move, every moment of coldness disguised as hurt feelings. This wasn't my traumatized daughter. This was Harold Morrison's child, trained to see me as the enemy. Well, Nicole demanded, checking her expensive watch. Have you made your decision about the money? I held up the DNA results like evidence in a courtroom. I have some questions first. Her face went through several expressions before settling on something between panic and rage, but not surprise. Never surprise. Where is my daughter, Nicole? That's when I knew for certain she'd been playing a role her entire life. Because instead of confusion or shock at my question, Nicole Morrison, not Nicole Thompson, smiled like a predator who'd finally been caught. The real conversation was about to begin. Where is my daughter, Nicole? That smile told me everything. Cold, calculating. The expression of someone whose mask had finally slipped off completely. You want to know about your precious daughter, Nicole's voice dripped with 27 years of carefully hidden venom. Sarah Morrison raised her for exactly 18 months before she couldn't stand looking at her anymore, the constant reminder of what you did to her family. My legs nearly gave out. What I did? Don't play innocent, Mom. The word mom came out like she was spitting poison. You seduced a married chaplain while his wife was struggling with her own pregnancy. Sarah told me everything before she died. How you destroyed their marriage. How you ruined their family. The twisted logic hit me like a freight train. Sarah Morrison had spent years filling this child's head with lies, painting me as the villain in a story I barely remembered living through. My grief-stricken affair with Harold Morrison had been wrong, sure, but I'd been a broken widow barely holding on to sanity. Sarah couldn't bond with your biological daughter because every time she looked at her, she saw your betrayal, Nicole continued, pacing my living room like she owned it. So she did what any smart woman would do. She sent the kid to live with Harold's distant relatives when she was 2 years old. Where? My voice cracked. Pennsylvania, maybe Ohio. Sarah never told me exactly where, and frankly, I never cared enough to ask. The casual cruelty in her tone made my chest burn. This woman had known for years that somewhere out there, my real daughter was growing up with strangers. And she'd never said a word. How long have you known the truth? Since I was 16, Nicole said, examining her manicured nails like we were discussing the weather. Sarah had cancer and thought she was dying. Deathbed confession and all that drama. She told me how you'd stolen her husband, destroyed her marriage, and that I was Harold Morrison's daughter. Said you owed our family everything. 16 years old. She'd known for over a decade and had spent that entire time calculating how to extract payment from me for crimes I'd supposedly committed. But Sarah recovered from the cancer, Nicole continued. Lived another 8 years, actually. Plenty of time to teach me exactly how much you owed us, how much you'd stolen from my real father's legacy. The inheritance demand suddenly made perfect sense. Nicole wasn't just being greedy. She genuinely believed she was collecting a debt. Sarah Morrison had poisoned this child against me from the grave. The grandchildren, I whispered. Are they even? Oh, they're mine, Nicole laughed. But you're not their grandmother, are you? You're just some woman who helped raise their mother's husband's illegitimate daughter, practically a stranger. That hurt worse than anything else. Those precious children I'd loved, spoiled, babysat, and worried about. They weren't my blood family at all. Just step-grandchildren by the most technical definition. Nicole pulled out her phone and started typing. Here's my final offer. Give me $1.5 million, and I'll tell you which relatives took your daughter. You can spend the rest of your inheritance trying to find her. Refuse, and I disappear forever with the only grandchildren you'll ever have. I looked at this stranger who'd called me mom for 27 years. This woman I'd sacrificed everything for, who'd never once shown genuine affection or gratitude, who'd learned to weaponize my love against me. Something inside me shifted. Maybe it was finally understanding that you can't earn love from someone incapable of giving it. Maybe it was realizing that being alone was better than being manipulated. No, I said quietly. Nicole's confident expression flickered. What? You heard me. No. But my real battle was just beginning. No. Nicole's confident mask cracked like cheap paint. 27 years of manipulation, and she'd never heard that word from me before. "You're making a mistake," she hissed, but I could see panic creeping into her eyes. "Those kids will forget you exist." "Maybe they will." I sat down in Michael's old recliner, feeling calmer than I had in decades. "But I won't forget myself anymore." Here's what I realized standing there. Love isn't supposed to hurt this much. Real daughters don't hold grandchildren hostage for money. Real family doesn't spend years plotting revenge for imaginary crimes. Nicole grabbed her purse like she was fleeing a fire. "Fine, enjoy your blood money and your empty house. Don't come crying to me when you're dying alone." After she slammed my door, I made myself a cup of tea and called a private investigator. That was 8 months ago. The PI found my real daughter living in Pittsburgh. Her name is Jennifer. She's a nurse, and she has 2 teenagers who don't know their grandmother exists. The Morrison relatives who raised her told her that her birth parents died in a car accident. Jennifer and I have been talking on the phone every Sunday. Careful conversations at first, like 2 people walking on ice. But last week she laughed at something I said, and the sound reminded me so much of Michael that I cried for an hour afterward. We're meeting in person next month. She's nervous. So am I. Nicole kept her word about disappearing, mostly. She moved to Arizona with my step-grandchildren and the $50,000 I gave her as a parting gift. Sometimes she sends photos of the kids, usually around holidays. I think somewhere underneath all that poison Sarah Morrison fed her, Nicole might actually miss having someone who cared about her unconditionally. But that's her loss now, not mine. I've started taking art classes with my inheritance money. Turns out I'm terrible at watercolors, but decent at pottery. Jennifer says her daughter might want to learn ceramics too. The funny thing about losing a fake family is how much room it makes for a real one. I spent 68 years trying to earn love from people who couldn't give it. Now I'm learning what it feels like when someone actually wants to know you. Michael's dog tags still hang around my neck, but they feel lighter these days, like he's finally proud of the woman wearing them. Some battles are worth fighting, some families are worth finding, and sometimes the greatest gift you can give yourself is the word no.